Hi guys, welcome to this video. This video will be somewhat different from the usual tutorial videos. So recently I came across an old source code repository in one of my hard drives, and I've thought of reviewing a few applications that I developed like 5 years ago, 4 years ago. So one of the applications that caught my eye is this one here, Xena SH. So I thought of reviewing this application and trying to see the logic behind the features that were developed in the application. So let's go ahead and open up this folder, and probably in the subsequent videos I might review the rest of the applications or whatever source code I was trying to write. All right, let's go ahead and open this one, Xena SH, which actually means storehouse. It's an application that keeps track of inventory. So yeah, let's go ahead and open it up. All right, so we can see here that this is a Visual Studio project setup here by seeing this solutions file here. So I'll open up the folder here. All right, so here we have the source code. And by the look of things, we can tell that this is a WPF project and it's developed on the .NET framework by just seeing this properties folder and resources folder. All right, so this application was actually built so we can actually run it and see how it functions. Then after that, we can review the source code and try to understand the logic. All right, so let's go open the bin folder, debug. All right, so there we have it. So we have the application here and we have the dependencies. From looking at the dependencies, we can see that it uses SQLite and Newtonsoft JSON. And this is a database file, so it's probably part of the application. And this one, Tactic. This was supposed to be Tactic. This was Static. So this is a library I wrote. I don't know what source code is in there, but let's hope we can try to review whatever is in there. And here's the executable file. So we can go ahead and try to run the application. All right, so the application is up and running, and we can see that we have a navigation panel here. And the first item that we have that is active is the layout here. So we have a grid here, and the way this application was designed, it was designed for us to be able to add some layout of a physical storehouse. For example, if you have a number of storehouses at a facility, a physical location, maybe you have shipping containers or rooms, etc. You could actually visualize them right here in the layout. So let's try to add a few things. So we have a simple toolbar here. So we have a plus icon here. Let's click on it. All right, so this pop-up allows us to add a new layout. So we can choose the size, the layout, and the orientation. And we can also select a category here. So we have container, room, spare parts. Let's say we have spare parts, and we can also pick a color here. Let's try to pick purple. Then let's name this one bin 1, and we choose this size here. All right, so I'll go ahead and add. All right, so we have bin 1 in purple. We can add another one, bin 2. Let's make it the size, and another one. Let's try this one, bin 3. You can change that to room. Okay, so there we have it. So this layout allows us to set up how our facility is arranged, or maybe let's say the rooms. So let's say we have bin 1 as a room, or a shipping container. All right, so let's say this is the layout, and you would want to actually check what's in this room or that room. So that's the function of the layout, to actually visualize the physical appearance of the storehouse. You can arrange it whatever way you want. You don't have to necessarily mimic the physical actual storehouse. Whatever you want to do is fine. All right, then by right clicking here, we can actually view the item. So let me try to see if I can open it up. All right, so here we have a message box, and it only brings pop up. So it's just displaying the type which is a type of pop-up, and we'll try to examine the source code and why this is happening. All right, so I'll close this. So yeah, that's it. And we can see that we also have a few buttons here on the toolbar. We have grid. I guess this is to toggle the grid. We can toggle the grid. We have a zoom. We can zoom in. And we can also zoom out. All right, so let's go to the other one, which is the in out. All right, okay, nothing is happening here, so I'm assuming this wasn't implemented. Let's go to the records. All right, so here we have the records page, outbound and inbound. Now you notice that there's some Chinese here. Well, I was planning to use this application at work where a number of people speak Chinese, so I was hoping they could use it with ease. And I actually speak Chinese myself. Yeah. 大家好，欢迎来到 Tactic Devs. Just in case some of you don't believe. All right, so the function of this inbound is basically to keep track of the records. So you can select a date here, and from the date, it will tell you what came in and what went out. So using the calendar, you can select a date, and it will tell you what came in and what went out. So for now, I guess I didn't finish implementing. We don't see any sample data. All right, so that's it for the records. Let's go to the stock. All right, stock is where we can add stock, like the items that are actually there. And we can see, we can search here. We have search. We can change to Chinese. That's if, the stock was named in Chinese and English. All right, so we can change the language there. I just added this feature. Then you can select the warehouse that you would want to check, whatever warehouse you would like to add stock to, just by using this drop down. Filter the list. Okay, so here we have add new stock. So we can add stock. Let me try wood. It's a name, Muto. Wood should be called Muto in Chinese, if I'm not mistaken. Just write the pinyin, and here we can select the unit. For unit, I don't know what this means. I can't remember. Then we can select the category. So we have room, spare parts, and suppose the category doesn't exist here, we can add more. Like we can add a category. Let's say raw material. All right, raw material, then we can add, and it appears here. So if we check here or it doesn't appear, we might have to restart the application. And that's one thing with developing applications. If you add a new category here, you would want it to appear here. So it's best to implement logic that keeps everything in sync. Right here, maybe we can set the quantity to 50. Then let's try to add. All right, apparently nothing happened. Okay, so that's stock and that's layout. So let me try to close the application and try to run again. I should have implemented a way to save the layout. So let me close this. All right, we can see that everything disappeared. So I'm assuming this button here, which has no name, should be the save button. So let's go ahead and let me minimize this. Let's add in a few. Okay, so let's say just a bin1, add, and let's add another one, bin2. All right, so here we have bin1 and bin2. Then I'll try to save by clicking this button. I'm assuming this is the save button. All right, let me close and start again. All right, so we have our bins, but this time they are squished. The shapes are changed. Well, let's see. Let me place it here and here. Then let me save, close, start. The shapes keep changing and the location changes as well. All right, let's go ahead and review the code. So I'll go to the source codes folder here, which is the root of the project. And then I'm going to open the terminal from here. All right, so here we can see in the terminal that we have the folder specified here. So I can open this folder in Visual Studio Code. So I'll simply type in code space, then a full stop, then enter. So this should open Visual Studio Code. All right, so there we have it. We have our folders open here. So we can examine the source code, and we are going to start by opening up the main Windows code behind file. All right, so here we can see that once the main window is initialized, we have some objects here. So this is a layout page. This should be the pages. So we have the layout page, records page, and stocks page. We only have 3. We didn't implement the in-out page. All right, so here in the constructor, we can see that we have this mainframe content set to the layout page. So this is the default page, which is the layout page. And we notice that every time we open the application, it's set to the layout page. Then here we have menu list selection changed. So this is the panel on the left side that we can actually use to change the content of the application, whether it's the records, stock, etc. And here we have a switch statement. It just checks the selected item. So if it's the first index, then we set the page to layout. If it's the second index, we do nothing. And that's the reason we didn't have in-out. We didn't have the in-out page displayed because we don't do anything. Then here we have the second, which is the third index, and we set the content to records, and finally to the stocks page. So that's all we have in the main window. Now let's go to the layouts page. So in the layouts page, the class name is Storehouse Layout Page. So let's look for the Storehouse Layout Page here. Okay, here we have it. All right, so this is the layout page. So we have a few variables here. Vertical line offset, okay. Then we have a list of houses, active houses. Then we have a context menu. Remember, we tried to click on a house, the context menu. So this should be that context menu. We initialize that context menu. All right, so here in the constructor, we start by inserting the grid to the canvas. So the grid that you see whenever the layout is being laid out, this is because of this function. And this 20, this has to do with the size. Let's navigate to where this function is. All right, so this is the function. And we can see that we specify a canvas and we specify the grid size. So we have a vertical line, which is of the length 8,000 pixels. Then here we have a for loop. So in this for loop, it runs 400 times. And it adds a line to the canvas. So you can see target canvas, children, then add. We add a new line. Then the line is based on the length and the offset, the stroke, etc. So we add this line based on this length and yeah. So the vertical and the horizontal line. So we add 2 lines. We add the horizontal line, then the vertical line. Then every time we add a line, we need to move to the left or to the right. So, no, we need to move horizontally and vertically every time we add a line. And we do that based on the grid size. So when we write the first line, we move a certain distance, the second line. And because of those steps, we end up having the grid, the boxes or the spaces between the lines. So that happens here. So every time every time this loop executes, it increments that, and the new line is drawn at a new position. All right, so let's go to, so here we have drag move. So we get the position of the mouse, then the change. If the change, let's see. So we move a number of steps, divide by 20. Then whatever element we are dragging, we set its left and top based on the displacement, based on how the mouse has moved. So if it moves to the right, then we set the left here, and that is updated. All right, so what's this here? Mouse move. All right, this is also implemented when we are dragging. So the drag move is what we saw here. So when the mouse is dragging and moving, we execute this function, which is here, which simply moves whatever object we are dragging by setting the left and top. And here we have the zoom factor. This is how we zoom in and zoom out. So these two functions are responsible for zooming in and zooming out. And this is a click event handler. So when we click on zoom, we have a zoom factor. And all we do is we just set the render transform, the scale transform, and we transform it according to the zoom factor. So the scale transform will take an X and Y scale. So we have the zoom factor for the X and for the Y. So we are changing the size of the canvas and every child in the canvas. So when we zoom, we are zooming the grid, we are zooming the layouts. So everything looks like it's zooming in. So this is the implementation. And this is the tag grid. This is how we get rid of the grid. So let's navigate to this. So if the grid is set on, we do this, otherwise we do the rest. So what we do is we go to the canvas and we get every child in the canvas. And we check if every child is of the type line. So if it's a line, we set the opacity to 0. So we know that the only line existing in that canvas is a grid line. So we set the opacity to 0. I think this can be implemented in a better way, but because running this loop until all the lines are exhausted, that's a bit resource intensive. All right, so we add a storehouse here. Okay, we simply add a new storehouse, place it onto the canvas, and here we have the pop-up window that adds the new layout, the new house rather. Then we save the storehouses here. So how do we save? We run a for each loop, which loops through the list of children, checks if it's of the type storehouse. Then we get the properties of this storehouse and write it to the JSON file here. So we can see write all, and write it to the JSON file here. We use JSON convert, serialize object, etc. Okay. So here we restore the storehouse based on what we read from the file here. Then we place it onto position, etc. So I think this is the most important source code we can have a look at, and that's the layout. Let's look at the storehouse. This is the storehouse. Let's look at the records code behind, and we see that in the records code behind we do not have anything implemented. Let's go to the stocks. All right, for the stocks we have a number of queries. So we query stuff from the database. So we simply query stuff, save them to observable collections, and we have the search here. So with search, we simply create a connection, then whatever text we have in the search box, we can search that out. And when writing this code, I was simply using SQL queries. I was going the ADO.NET way, which you have to write queries, but the best way is to use an ORM like .NET's Entity Framework. So that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you in the next one.